So, I just saw Dune last night, part 2, and yeah, it's pretty great. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Hold on, wait. I think we started off this podcast on the wrong way. Allow me.
The spice overall power, or whatever.
Okay, there we go. Well, okay, I'm happy now. Let's keep going.
All right. So, we start off with not Zendaya this time, Spider-Man's girlfriend. We start off with that one. We start off with Goldilocks, aka that communist chick from Oppenheimer, who was a lover or wife of Oppenheimer, and now as the daughter of the Emperor himself. Her father is Crystal Walken.
Goldilocks, why are you making out with the man who made the atomic bomb? I told you not to shag him.
But father, I go. But oh wait, we should save that for later.
I said, how am I going to play a king? You know, I'm from Queens.
Baron, you are so fat, you make Jabba the Hutt look like Usain Bolt. Like a
Jabba the Hutt ripped off of me.
Yeah, if you couldn't tell already, Dune has definitely inspired Star Wars, and we can definitely see the influences bit by bit. I mean, there's other influences.
It's the greatest irony that Dune came out after the Disney trilogy, after Star Wars destroyed itself.
At least this particular adaptation of it. There have been adaptations beforehand.
But this time, it said that Dune is unfilmable, but they managed to actually going all the way with it. And how many books are they exactly? Like 3 or 4?
These 2 films take up the first Dune book. As far as I'm aware, there's like 7 others. Like, it was a very wise choice, production-wise, to split the film into several parts. That was definitely a wise choice, considering the sheer amount of world building and details that they have to get to make a cohesive narrative.
Man, if they really are going off the books, then they will probably have much movies as the entire Disney trilogy added on to this whole Star Wars saga.
Absolutely. I've heard they're making a spin-off series regarding the Bene Gesserits at some point, so that makes sense.
It still bizarres me that this is the first chapter, technically. The last one was the prologue. It's the first chapter.
Well, actually...
They have the story of Phil Christopher Nolan flick.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan's gonna blush. I've actually read the first half of Dune, and that first half of Dune, that is pretty much Dune Part 1, so I guess it depends on how you define prologue. But I suppose I can understand why you'd call it prologue. But anyway, Part 2 definitely wraps up most of the loose ends established in Part 1. Well, pretty much all of them, but setting up some new loose ends for...
All right, well, progressing. Yeah. We're going to talk about the first half. We're going to all to the way to the end. The first scene all the way. So back to the Christopher Walken. I didn't do anything. I did nothing. Apathy is death. I did nothing because House of Atreides is now dead, and I don't give a shit.
Now you've got me imagining Walken speaking of Krea's quotes. Apathy is death. Worse than death.
You can easily pay the rotten corpse and beat these and beats and eat things.
And that is my lesson for you.
Lesson for you. Lesson for
you. We love Christopher Walken.
Yeah. So he is in this movie, and like the Emperor, like him, he is not that much in it, but he's definitely a prominent part of it. So that the princess is basically the new narrator, and she's giving more length to the world. She's establishing through the journal, and then we cut off where we left off where our heroes now Paul is this messiah figure, and some people believe that he is, Hail Messiah! Hail Messiah! I'm not the Messiah! Lord, I know I followed some You had a similar scene like that. He's so humble and modest.
And then Chani just walks in and says, "Now listen here! He's not the Messiah! He's a very naughty boy!"
He's like the naked guy. No, he's not! An unbeliever! Kill the heretic! Oh, leave her alone! Leave her alone!
Oh, great. Now you've got me comparing Dune with Life of Brian.
He just opens up when he has sex with Johnny, and then he opens up and the entire frame. Look, there he is. The chosen one has awoken.
Now, just imagine Paul Atreides, like, with all the fundamentals saying, "You are all different. Yes, we are all different."
I'm not.
Shh.
Yeah, there's non-believers also.
That's interesting that they went that far with the world building. The fact that it's not so straightforward. There are some people who are quite divided on the prophecies. Some people really believe them. Other people are more skeptical. Other people say, "Well, we believe them, but it's not yet." But others
And
think,
also, guess what? Paul's mother is pregnant with his sister, and they even have this fetus shot. They have a shot of the fetus, and they did out the movie. They have the shot of her, how the progression of the baby birth. So and so both Paul and his mother, even if they're a bit skeptical of the prophecy, regardless, pull full illusion on them and manipulate them as possible in order to make it more true than it probably actually is. But in order to see it's probably true, that his mother drank this blue stuff. It's like from The Simpsons. Drink this liquid. Always. And she would die if she were regular, but she lived because she lived. So that means that gives more proof that Paul is like she is the son of the Messiah. The Messiah. Yeah, see, that's why I say Shandi wouldn't be like Brian's mom. She would be like Brian's mom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, since she obviously is a Mary allegory.
This film delves a lot into religion, by the way, so you get used to this kind of talk. Like even within the Christian worldview, there's like warnings of like antichrists and like false prophets, and you can definitely see this from other aspects. Like people have compared the character of Paul Atreides to the Prophet Muhammad a lot.
Yeah.
The comparisons. Yeah, the whole religious system of this whole series as a whole is mainly based on the source that Frank Herbert referred to as like the Orange Catholic Bible, which is this hodgepodge of Abrahamic religions and Buddhism, like all
and
meshed
Islamic,
into one.
Islamic.
Yeah, all this. Yeah, and Islam in there too, all meshed into this.
Is there Hinduism too? Is there Hinduism?
Probably, I don't know. But it's
bet
all
there's
meshed
also
into one.
Luciferian. I bet there's Luciferian.
Yeah. All the stuff that kind of sounds nice and the sort of wisdom to kind of go by and these sort of phrases that you kind of live by, and it's all meshed into this hodgepodge of a book.
But there's the benefit that this is more of deconstruction of it. It's not really, because even the main characters, Paul and his mother, are more like they're not as easily, but they're running with it anyway because
It's important to note that Frank Herbert lived a life as a journalist. From the way he authors his books, it's kind of like he's giving a report.
Actually, from the first movie in this actually feels like reporters, like when the Islamic or the Holy Wars, or like or you're one of the journalists like in the holy cities, like
precisely. So it makes sense as to why the style is a bit detached and. Emotionally speaking, and how he sees like religion not as necessarily true or false, but as something useful.
And also since Hazbin Hotel came out this year, like Dune, and that they're a bit religious, but there's one thing that is not. That I'm not talking about religious part. That there's this whole like logos and arrows like that I like about Shonen and Seinen. I know it's a little off topic. Don't worry, but.
All right.
Hazbin Hotel is to what Dune is shoujo deep fried. It's like completely emotional with only a little hint of logic, where Dune is like the opposite of that, where it's logic first, and Dune like little. All right, I think we're getting a little sidetracked a bit. So let's get back.
To the plot, yeah.
I have to. So Paul, in order to convince the Fremen, he has to go native. Like among a little bit like kind of like Avatar, except without any of the whole environmentalist crap.
Here we there's a more of a comparison between Paul and someone like Lawrence of Arabia, who has a very similar approach to like people who lived in the desert, and that he too got involved in the war in the desert and eventually won over the people and became an influential figure.
So he went on. He had to pull up this great task, like something out of Hercules, like like get the head of a Hydra, or head of, or kill a giant lion, or so he has to tame a great grandfather worm, or is it just a grandfather worm? Like
I think they called it a great grandfather worm. Although one of the characters said, "Look, don't show off. We know you're brave," but he summons a grandfather one anyway.
But yeah, that's how Lelouch-esque he is.
Yeah.
I feign humility. I feign it. I'm really good at it. So, he tames a grandfather worm, and he had to go through all this, and I know that I almost forgot. Every time all I just care about is the grandfather worm. But during this time, he, like in Avatar, he like fell in love with a native, Shadi. He fell in love with. But it's just so weird about how in the first part he sees visions of her, of something beautiful, love. But honestly, with their relationship, I know that it's I mean, it could. It's just the execution of their relationship I don't buy. I just don't buy, because it's not, because this whole, like I said, it's sign-in deep fried, logic logos deep fried, about how like logistical it is about, so it's almost like deadpan or like tone deaf about the romance is tone deaf.
Almost, like, not entirely,
yeah.
But almost, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I barely even care about, or don't even want to talk about. I care about more the grandfather worm than I care about that.
All right. There's a lot of things about relationships, and a relationship can be compromised, but I guess we'll get to that later. But
so,
basically,
while he's going through his trials, they have like been destroying spice depots, and the Harkonnens are getting so bad at their job that this is where it gets a bit more interesting, especially starting after the grandfather worm, is that this in this like black and white dome, there's this sociopathical there's this this sociopathical killer that is one of the Harkins, and we are introduced to him, and about him, he's a cool character. I mean, it's like, man, this story is so afraid of emotion. I think this is what brings it. And that girl from Inglourious Basterds, who is one of the priestess of the religious cult. Also, yeah. So who also was seeing him. He was all observing him, but him and the princess of the guy, the princess, or no, it wasn't the princess. It was the priestess. I actually kind of get them confused. It was the priestess, him and the priestess. So the priestess basically says everything about him, but we don't see that he's not a psychopath. He's a sociopath, and he's emotionally vulnerable. We only see little bits. We only see hints of there's visuals, but we don't go into depth of it. You see, that's how little emotion there is. That's how little emotion matters, how they're just saying out, and there's but it's very smartly well done. See, it's not like you it's like, hey, we're saying all this stuff off screen. It's more about the body language, about especially when we see the character, you can definitely tell, even though we don't get that much depth into the emotion, more depth into the logic.
It's very clever visual storytelling, now that you mention it, because you have this sociopathic character and he's being tempted by the member of the Bene Gesserit, and he's being manipulated, and then right when they're about to have sex, she's doing the whole pain box thing where she has the poison needle up to him, and then later on when she explains that she managed to get pregnant, and she said that this sociopath absolutely loves pain. I just think to myself, whoa, man, he must have been having a really good time with his hand in the box.
Speaking of who also is having sex, there was this that Paul and Shondi were on top of each other, and they didn't have clothes on. So speaking of that, also someone who got some whoopee.
Yeah, it's implied that I've heard that Paul Atreides actually does have children with Chani in the sequel, so that must be the
spoiler, man. Spoiler. I haven't even read the book yet.
Fair enough. It's just all I've heard. There's some weirder stuff going on in the sequels, but we're not going through that hodgepodge of stuff.
So the Harkonnens see that they were doing a pretty crappy job with Drax Destroyer. Oh yeah, and every time I see that character, I just think of Drax. I don't even see the character. All I just see is if Drax didn't come out before this, I would have saw his own character. But all I just see is just Drax without the literalness, so Drax is doing a job, so they get Freud, this guy, in to take his place.
I think one of the complaints that people have made is that the Harkonnens weren't as smart as the first one, but to their credit, it actually makes sense that the Drax character is making decisions out of desperation and anger, and in doing so, he fails his job, so they have to send in the sociopath instead to finish the job, and he becomes far more lethal and effective that way. So I guess there's that.
So yeah, and as Freud attacks the people, and he takes control of the and also he becomes governor of Arrakis. So. And as that, we are reintroduced to, speaking of MCU characters, Josh Brolin's Thanos cruelly, that he apparently survived and he became a smuggler, and I don't even remember how he survived.
Well, he did survive the invasion of the Atreides house, and he was one of the few people who managed to make it out of the carnage, fighting his way through with some men before escaping, alongside Duncan, who also escaped before he sacrificed his life to
we have this honestly, no jokes right here. Honestly, I felt more emotion and more of a genuine bond when Paul reunites with Gurui. I felt more for that than I felt with his relationship with Shani. I felt more that.
Gosh, that's very true. Actually, it's very true.
Well, yeah. Honestly, I felt they had more chemistry.
Oh man. So they get reunited, and fortunately, the Josh Brolin character points out he knows where the Atreides have been hiding these atomic bombs in times.
Yeah, they have atomic bombs. I didn't even know atomic bombs existed in this world. I didn't even know that. So speaking of Oppenheimer, do they have an Oppenheimer in this world who became Death, the Destroyer of Worlds? And they said that could blow the planet. Figure of speech.
I was watching the film for a second time, and after the film was done, I was saying Paul has become Death Destroyer of Worlds, and then the person next to me just said, why does everything have to get back to Oppenheimer?
Well, the chick is in this. The girl from it is in this. And we'll talk about her later also with Paul. So, that Paul sees more visions, and especially with the nuclear bomb, that he will literally go like this Death Destroyer Worlds, with how 8 billions of people will starve to death because he'll start a war if he goes to the south. So, in order to fight against death, to challenge fate, to fight against fate, he drinks the same blue fluid as his mother, and
I'll explain it. Basically, I've been told by someone in the comments that the book makes a bigger deal of the fact that men can't survive drinking this water of life, which comes from the baby worms.
Yeah, it's but okay. So he sees his future sister. He sees his future sister fully grown, and he finds out that his mother is the daughter of the Harkonnen Baron, the Harkonnen. Yeah, and also there's this one part that doesn't make sense where I feel like that there was a scene that was, but Chandy came from one of those Harkonnen Dragonfly ships, or that used to belong to the Atreides.
Yeah.
She somehow got that. I feel like there's a scene missing with how did she get that ship and she came. It would make sense if she came on the worm, but she somehow got that ship and came to his side from that ship. I don't know how she got a hold of that ship, obtained it. I still don't know. That doesn't make sense to me.
Maybe she like got it from the atomic place. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. No, I'd rather be there. And I didn't see any like ships. I didn't see any ships.
I mean, the film's long enough as it is, but I think more scenes needed to be made to develop those
and
segues
there's
and
some
relationships.
kinks in the armor I'm detecting a bit.
But
Guess what? Paul really is Jesus because he dies and then by Chani he's come back from the dead. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
So yes, it's a big deal that Paul managed to survive that, because it's clearly established that no man can survive drinking that.
And there's like some part of her name like that is like a desert spring that only be saved by desert spring tears.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's kind of interesting how there's, of course, like these prophecies have been manipulated into being by the Bene Gesserit, but still the fact that the Bene Gesserit, and by extension Paul as well, have this supernatural ability to like prophesy and think ahead,
and have that Code Geass power.
The voice in this case.
I'm now more convinced that is no coincidence that in some way Code Geass was inspired by Dune also.
Yeah, you could definitely see some comparisons there.
Or it's just giant coincidence. I don't know. It's also especially with how she brought it's like that whole like from Cut Knights of the Old Republic that love will save you, not condemn you. So I know that emotion really. This is where I also find some problems that if there was no if she wasn't built up from the first movie and also so prevalent in the second movie as a important part, if it was just like mostly masculine and no feminine need, then I wouldn't be as complaining about the lack of emotion. So, and since she's such a big figurehead, you're kind of gonna need more nuance in their motion. Honestly, I'm not one of those like people who would like, oh no, that the romance sucks and that there's no emotion. There needs to be emotion, like Cosmonaut would be like, there need to have feelings. No, this can be completely logical, but that since Johnny's apparently such a big player that there's gonna need to be emotion. Yeah, and so I don't find a problem with that because the movie is so dead set on logistics. But then why make the romance such a big part at all if you're not willing to put nuance into the romance?
Yeah, I hear the kind of distance way of storytelling kind of works, but also doesn't work at the same time because
it's a paradox. It's a bit.
Yeah, it's a strange paradox because if you, on the one hand, they need to make this longer to add more characters, but on the other hand, it makes thematical sense that it's told from a distance perspective, and the characters are mainly in it for power anyway.
Yeah, so that's why I don't love it as much as I should. Probably I don't love it. I don't say it's great as it should be because there is this still center figure of love. But like also from Kodor, love saves you, not condemns you. That literally loves bring him back to life. Even though we'll get to how that love pays off. We'll get to that.
Oh man.
All right. So now people more even the disbelievers more believe that he really is the Messiah. He is the Messiah.
And
off. Oh wait, actually, never mind. I need you. Oh wait, I need you actually. I need you. How
must we need you, sire?
All right. So
Paul manages to persuade the fundamentalists by his ability to prophesy and to
and
look at
he
people.
says, it, you know what? I'm going to starve so many people. I'm going to risk that. All just, and it's more building up to the real motive behind that is more to rebuild House Atreides. It's not really to free the Freeman and just it's to get revenge against the Harkonnens and rebuild House Atreides with from the Freemen.
And to establish the promised green paradise.
Yeah, but to quote Guts, there is no paradise for you to escape to. All you find is just a battlefield. And man, by the time this movie ends, you really feel that.
Aye, absolutely. Even the Josh Brolin character is beginning to catch on to the usefulness of the prophecies by stopping Chani from speaking out a bit too much, because he's got a bit of vendetta himself.
He literally, while he was drinking the blue fluid, literally was able to see into the past of the people and what it was called before before the Harkonnens ever came to this, what their ancestors used to call it, Dune.
Ooh.
And then they all worship him, know him, that he is the Messiah.
And in the Dune series, yes. And so with so many people by his side,
and I was a bit wondering, how did the Emperor know about this? But I guess since the witches are on his side, the religious, they must have sensed that he would have known this. So that's why the Emperor came to Arrakis.
The witches aren't really on anyone's side. They just care for power.
But then how did the Emperor, like, why would the Emperor go there if he wouldn't know about how this major revelation that Paul went through? How would we know that? How would we know that?
It's implied that the Bene Gesserit don't reveal everything to all the sides, but they go to all the different sides and tell them.
Yeah, I know that there's this one scene that, but they had to be at service. That's what I'm trying to say. So they had to reveal to the Emperor that Paul knows of his bloodline or of something. So that's why the Emperor himself would come to Arrakis.
There's even some other themes at play, which kind of delves further into the sort of geopolitical.
And Mr. Walken, I'm the Emperor. I'm Palpatine in this version. I'm Darth Sidious.
Tell me, have you ever heard of the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise? He was a Sith Lord, so powerful. They said.
Wise. He can even manipulate whatever the hell this is. What power system is this again?
The midichlorians.
No.
The spice.
He can manipulate the spice to create.
Oh man. This person will become more powerful than either of us, Yoda.
And since Paul's kind of a bit like Anakin, that he wants to stop people from dying a bit. So there's kind of that. So now that the Emperor's come to Arrakis with his daughter, basically, Paul's like, launch the nukes!
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I suppose I should take some time to delve into like the geopolitical themes here, because as you were saying about the Bene Gesserit, they were the one pulling the strings in the first place. It kind of goes further to the reason why Paul Atreides is able to relatively easily wipe out the Harkonnens and most of the Emperor's men. So basically, the Bene Gesserit's plan was to sustain their power over the galaxy and the planet Arrakis particularly, and they saw they had a usefulness for like the Atreides bloodline with one of their members, Jessica, the mother. But they saw that they could become a threat to their loss of power. So they got the Emperor, who in turn got the Harkonnens to kill the Atreides. Yes. And so it's established via world building that when the Emperor hears the news that Paul, aka Muad'Dib, is alive, the leader of the Bene Gesserit tells the Emperor's daughter that either way.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's it.
That whatever happens, the Emperor is going to lose his throne, and there is one way.
It's not also because it's the witches or the, what would you call them, witches?
Yeah, the Bene Gesserit
It's
are
not just
basically
witches'
witches.
interests,
Yeah.
but we'll discuss that it's also the Emperor's interest that House Atreides would be destroyed also.
And he said, don't worry about it. He said, the king is seen by reflection.
Well, the Emperor came to the Baron, the Harkonnen
Harkonnens.
Baron is pissed off that, and they've been relieved from their control of Arrakis, and the Baron on himself is just cut off from his tubes, and so now the Paul's men, the Fremen, after the nuke went on, they summoned a bunch of worms, and they swept through the armies. And then basically Paul with his men came into the hut, the palace, and basically they both had agreement to kill the Baron, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they killed him and then left him in the desert, and then they took the Emperor hostage.
All right, but the Emperor has one last trick up his sleeve, as it were. He gets the sociopathic Harkonnen as his champion to determine who's going to be the ultimate
Okay, I was
victor over
pissed because
Dune.
I thought this character's cool and I wanted to have a purpose in some way. So I was gonna be pissed if they're gonna throw him because he hasn't done really anything so far. I mean, he's done stuff, he's massacred, he's done, but nothing like personal. But that's where this scene came in, where Paul challenged him, and I was so glad that this happened. That because if he was just gonna fight side characters the whole entire time, then I would have been pissed. But Paul, cousin versus cousin, like something straight out of a twisted version of Arrested Development.
Oh man,
You lied to me. You said my father was my father, but my uncle's my father. My father's my uncle.
I'm a monster.
Yeah, showing him Arrested Development.
Yeah, I love that show.
So now Paul is facing against Foyd, his cousin versus cousin, which is usually it's brother versus brother. So I'm interested that it's cousin versus cousin.
Even Foyd himself is quite surprised by this. So they fight via knife duel. Everyone watches, and as the duel goes on, Foyd taunts Paul a wee bit, which kind of exposes Paul's true intentions a wee bit. So, but Paul doesn't say anything. So
it's kind of a bit reminds me of Code Geass, where that psychopath was, that one. Even though they weren't related, there's that some bit, and even from Tron Uprising, there was that one character that faced against this whole deterministic guy. I know this guy is different, but there's just some sort of pattern between like people who are like revolutionists and complete face against complete psychopaths.
I think I see what you're catching on to here. The kind of characters who have more or less have the same potential as the protagonist, but they touch the wrong buttons, as it were, and really get on their personal sides. In some cases, like it's happened with that one guy who pushed Lelouch into very difficult situations, even endangering his sister at points. And it happened with.
After all, it's a bit Sherlock-esque with these epics, but it's especially with Lelouch, that was a bit Sherlock-esque with his Moriarty. So in a way.
All right. So eventually, and it's interesting. After I saw this film for the second time, I was with someone else who read the books, and apparently, according to him, he said that it was more probable that the sociopath Foyd was going to win, but Paul managed to find a way through one outcome.
And he got stabbed right in the kidney. And I was impressed that they stabbed him right there. They stabbed him. And he just took it. He didn't get on the ground, but he managed to stab him in the heart, and then he killed the psychopath. Okay, and the cool character's gone. I was getting that from JJ Later, and it's gone.
South Park joke.
Yeah. South Park.
So good fight, and Paul is the victor, and Paul gets ownership over Arrakis and threatens.
And also, we revealed that it was not just only the witch's intention to kill off Atreides, but the Emperor's too, because your father was a man of the heart, and you don't rule from the heart. Your father was a weak man.
All right, you resonated with that quote in regards to this movie as a whole.
Your father was just like dolphins. Thor's was just like Thor's. You do realize that?
He was a weak man. So Paul is the victor, and Emperor has no choice but to bow down, kiss his ring, and then everyone acknowledges Paul as the leader of Atreides, and Paul threatens the other houses about the livelihood of the spice.
Pissed off the houses, but they were ones to stab in the back by also being in league with the Emperor and all this. So in a way, he's going to war with all the houses, all of them. But in order for him to be fully seen by the houses as legit, he has to do something that Johnny would like. He took the hand of the daughter, the princess of the Emperor, and basically pronounces himself Emperor by engaging himself to her. And now she wasn't just Oppenheimer's bitch; she was Paul's bitch too.
All this right in front of Johnny in public.
Yeah, and he said that everything I do from now on, I still love you. I have my fingers crossed. I hope you don't see that.
I think I'm watching it the second time. I find it interesting that they had that scene where Paul is trying to emphasize, okay, look, whatever happens, this thing I'm planning here, I still love you. I still love you. I still love you. Please remember that. Please remember that. Oh, hey, I'm gonna marry you. I still love you.
And I mean, I could buy the character of Paul as this like manipulative, secretly sociopath, but at the same time, I mean the actor, I don't a bit buy that much. It's the actor. I can definitely buy his performance, but I just don't buy his build. I just don't buy something as pudgy as him, that being this a bit. That I would expect someone. Hell, I could probably look that better. I could look better like that as a Lelouch figure, like who has that charisma and that manipulation. And so basically, Paul does basically what Griffith did to both Guts and Casca.
Right.
I sacrifice you.
Ooh.
Except the difference is, fortunately for you, I would not you in this.
Indeed. So the film pretty much ends off with Paul as the victorious leader. It's kind of interesting how this is a story of the good guy coming to a downfall only to get defeat the bad guys again. But there's a twist here. The twist here is that it's implied that Paul's going to become as bad as the bad guy he's defeated.
Yeah.
And he's had to compromise relationships.
Nietzsche, do not fight dragons, or you yourself will become a dragon. You will yourself become a dragon.
All right. The film ends with the ships in the sky heading off to war.
Freeman now they're abandoning. He got them to abandon their home planet and basically become the new House Atreides. But one person who defied it, Shadi, just was like left on the planet. It was the only one who didn't abandon her home planet. But you know what? I feel no emotion for this portrayal. You know, this world's smallest violin just playing just for her. They just left on her, like her on the planet alone. Her pissed off that her buddy. That's all I'm calling it. Her buddy. Basically, we only have one night stand. You were not special to me. You were not special to me. I'm sorry. You were not special.
Oh gosh. Either way, it ends with her about to ride off.
Even though, funny enough, that in the first Dune movie, that there was like these visions that she was something special. But I think actually, now I'm more to think about it, maybe it's just a twist, a subversion that she's not actually that special.
Well, there was that prophecy of like the desert flower bringing back the desert mouse back to life with the dewdrop. So there is that.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem with the emotion. That's why I don't buy it that much. Why I'm kind of more convinced about the subversion rather than the actual meaningfulness of the emotion, the romance. And I think that can be a valid critique, but if people don't get all pissy and fussy about it, okay. So Shani gets pissed, and she now is going to spend the rest of her life on the planet just riding worms, and then it ends.
All right, and I will say, as a story, whilst there are loose ends that are opened up, I'd say that enough loose ends were closed to have a complete, satisfying narrative. when you combine part 1 and part 2, what you ultimately get is this sci-fi epic about this geopolitical cautionary tale about the dangers of the pursuit of power.
Mm-hmm. Which I feel like people like Nietzsche or would disagree that honestly, or they say that this is a triumphant story about the pursuit of power, not a cautionary one, a triumphant story about how one brilliant guy manipulated the weaker or the disorganized into an organized empire that could take on the rest of the galaxy.
Aye, yeah, and certainly there's various perspectives that go into this. Like, it's well known across the internet by now that Tolkien wasn't a big fan of Dune because, in Tolkien's eyes, that kind of power
Seeing this
corrupts
now,
your
I
power.
definitely don't doubt that.
Yeah, absolutely, because in Tolkien's stories, that kind of power is represented by the bad guys, and he speaks against that by saying, no, the simple life is the way to go.
But this is master morality we're talking about. This is the power to also, but the will to power at action. The best example will to power, but in an epic, just like Nietzsche said that master morality came before slave morality.
I mean, Dune was far from the only inspiration from Star Wars, but yeah, you could definitely see the similar motifs, like the comparison between like the voice and the Force, and arguably comparisons between Paul Atreides and Anakin Skywalker in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, it's mostly I see as more Macbeth, or hell, Jeremy John sees as more as like Dracula, which are all good examples, but. Yeah, I don't think he's that much Anakin because I think that Anakin was born a slave. Remember that
Yeah,
Paul
was
born
among dukes.
and
Yes,
that's where the Lelouch is better because Lelouch is a banished prince, and in a way but except difference is Duke was a papaya, not really banished, more like basically killed his entire clan, and he had to rebuild the entire house and revolt against the entire universe and holding the emperor at his will and basically pronouncing himself the new emperor, dethroning him and taking his daughter.
Yeah, and there's certainly there's definitely some possibilities which no doubt could lead to future media, but I suppose.
And also, one thing we didn't say about that, there was a baby in the fetus. She's fully grown and she's talking to a mother, which is a little funny. It's a little funny.
Yeah, and the
the Holy War has begun. That the Holy War, you're gonna fight the infidels. You'll now be burned in the holy fire.
Yeah, the rest of the series is pretty much like this Holy War and just how much influence Paul gets, and to the point where he pretty much becomes the very thing he was trying to stop in the first place.
And the quote from Castlevania that I will lift the damned from hell and act its penance on the earth as my soldiers. So in a way, that's basically what Paul does to the houses that will enact their penance on their houses as his soldiers.
Right.
And I have one question.
Yeah.
Like, if he was fighting with 200 people, of course there are more people on the planet, right? So
yeah, that's why they went south to get all the fundamentalists on his side.
Yeah, there was like hundreds of thousands of them. Tens of thousands.
Yes,
but by default, there is no such force.
Moa Oh man. So yes, it's interesting how it all comes into play, and like you can go into detail about the shields and how using a gun on the shields actually causes explosions, which is why they tend to use melee weapons and stuff like that.
And not only does Paul have the Fremen on the side, he basically has the Emperor's army on his side since he's now the Emperor. He has basically all these like soldiers, all these resources. So yeah, I definitely buy that. This definitely has a great setup for the movies. I could definitely buy this is gonna be an amazing holy war against the houses. This is gonna be that I could definitely. And honestly, even though I still don't buy Paul like the actor, but I buy the performance that. Yeah, this guy could definitely take on. This guy could definitely take on the house. But I guess since Canute was a bit like that, he doesn't look like he could do but he never really grew into that. I mean, I don't I still don't buy that even that. I don't buy Paul in this way that like I mean he was just this nice kid in the first one, but by the end of this, he's now like a god emperor from Warhammer 40,000, 40K, like a god emperor. I mean, I would have probably bought this would have been better. I know there's probably gonna be like 7 or 8 movies more of that, but I kind of wish that this would have been the third film, so it would have more time and building that up a bit more.
Honestly, from what we've described, from what the film shows us, they don't even need to film like another hour or so. I think even just like tens of minutes worth of transition scenes, more relationship building and stuff like that. I think this could have elevated to masterpiece levels where, oh, it's even more tragic because the characters do get emotional, but they gotta suppress it in pursuit of power.
That's why it's mostly a 4-star for me. Not really. It's a flawed great film. It's a flawed great film.
Great film. We'd recommend you go watch it for these kind of discussions. But it's not exactly a perfect film, but definitely very fascinating just to see all this, as well as the fact that they're able to finally get the a good adaptation.
But I think that from this movie, what they have pulled off, that they can film the movies. I think that that's what the very great striving from this movie, that they can film the movies. It can be filmable. It can be done.
Now, keep in mind, there was a time when the Lord of the Rings series was considered unfilmable, and yet here we are now, and they considered Dune unfilmable. Yeah. Here we are now.
And it's so great and I can't wait for the next decade when they're gonna make a Rings of Power version for Dune. I can't wait for or Disney Children. Can't wait for something, or just 20 years. I'm saying just like something. Yeah. And it's more funny that it came around during the time of this.
Oh man. Oh man.
And okay, speaking of, let's talk more about the cultural impact, especially with since Hazbin Hotel a bit has that religious aspect to it, except it's way more Luciferian, more in love with the devil rather than actually being the devil, rather than actually, like something amiss, like Dune is more like, in a similarly like Aaron, like a bit, or also compare Paul to Aaron also a bit, especially how Aaron felt about Mikasa. He feels the same way about.
That's right. Oh my days.
Except there's no one to punch him in the face, no Armin to punch him in the face.
Oh gosh. Oh man. I mean, there's going to be lots of comparisons. I mean, people compared Paul himself to a lot of figures, and apparently there's even another reference in there to a Greek mythological figure called Atreus, which harkens back to the Atreides name, from what I've just recently pulled up.
What about Kronos? Would he be like Kronos, a figure that a guy who basically ate the gods, who ate a Titan who ate the gods?
Possibly.
Okay, back to the Hazbin Hotel thing. So there's that whole because there's still that slave morality that Hazbin Hotel believes in, where everyone gets to go to heaven, and that we believe in, or that there's still that like semblance of, or especially with the whole like feminine side, that you can tell that Hazbin Hotel, even if it doesn't really know its audience of like woke activists and like people like of that stature, this is a complete opposite audience for that. It's the complete opposite also message that if Paul was facing against Charlie herself, I would love them to fight to death just to prove, like, I mean, you know what I'm talking. Charlie Morningstar.
Oh yeah. Totally,
to fight her, and I would love him to, like a full Morgoth versus Ungoliant, like her being Ungoliant and him being Morgoth with his Fremen as the Balrogs, something a lot mix those. Because actually, that's where I think that's where Charlie is that of Ungoliant, or her the feminine also of that is in love with the evil, and Morgoth of Paul, who is like who is like against the whole chaoticness of it, and basically is enacting his order onto it
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
See, and I it came all the way around with J.R.R. Tolkien, and honestly, you know what he has in common? He would hate both of them combined. He'd hate both Hazbin and Dune combined.
Of course he would. Of course he would.
Now I'm going into the whole culture impact, especially with the alt right versus the alt left in America. Like
That's a
that
very
whole,
interesting comparison, actually. Yeah.
yeah. So it kind of symbolizes what this year is going to point out, especially with the whole presidential election, about how the future of America and also how the culture of America, of my country, how
Right.
how what we're at right now.
Yeah, it's pretty much a shame that a lot of people they never really find an in between. Like people paint this sort of black and white narrative of you're either full of emotion and everything needs to be in this specific way, or you're absolutely logistical and there's no room for emotion.
That's exactly what I was just watching a video about how Miyazaki had that critique about Americans. Well,
and then
it's not our fault that this country was founded upon Machiavellians, like completely in denial, and also a mix of selfishness, but aided by Christian faith, but to hide their selfish deeds, to hide their selfish intents, self-interest.
A
And
misuse
to make
of
it
it
more
all, yeah.
confusing, the more we go down the drain, the more, because we didn't. I know we're going now deeply into history, but I think this all ties back to Dune, because in a way, I think Paul Atreides is more like George Washington. Really, he basically fought back against King George III, and basically out of a rebellion formed his own empire, formed under the guise of good intentions of his own, but really guided by his own self-interests.
That makes a lot of sense now that you mention it. I mean,
but like George Washington, no matter what morals you think of it, you can definitely tell the effort that was put into by both the characters. But to quote this character from Assassin's Creed 3, Hayden Kenway, the people chose nothing. Just like it was done by a group of privileged cowards seeking only to enrich themselves. They can be improperly made a decision about them. They might trust with pretty words, but it's not make it true. That's what the mother and Paul was doing. They were privileged cowards seeking only to enrich themselves. They can be improperly made a decision about them.
I find it interesting how this film is has the right amount of open-endedness yet also fulfilling narrativeness, which actually serves the narratives of the theme of this never-ending cycle of the geopolitical pursuit for power that the human
Attack
beings...
on Titan also does this.
Yeah. I suppose it's very Nietzschean in that sense, in the fact that...
And how there's no really anyone to oppose him except for Shandi, but there's no like heroes that's going to fight against him. It's mostly the whole heroic is Paul is the Overmensch. He is the Overman. He is. No one's really saying he's the villain. It's not even portrayed he's the villain. And since the emotion is so lacking, I don't even feel by the end he's the villain, because the girl, even though it's some hint that she honestly, it feels like she's just gonna spend the rest of her life on this planet and just avoid and become there's gonna become like a hermit. And really, the rest of the series is just gonna focus on the Ubermensch Paul fighting against the houses as the hero. I don't see anyone opposing him there's no Armin character that sees the flaws in him. There's no character that is willing to oppose him and betrayed in a heroic way. So this is more Nietzschean than you may think it is. It is more in that way. He is the hero. He is not seen as a villain at all. He is seen as complete and total hero.
At least according to the Fremen and some other characters.
But I don't see any. But the only one who opposes him is Shandi. And if there is that, that's why I don't believe she's an Armin character that she would dare oppose him, because I think the only thing she cares about is, even beside the emotion, is her planet, Arrakis. And she doesn't care about all this house stuff. She doesn't care about the galaxy. All she cared about, why she mostly was on his side, was to protect her planet. And in a way,
she even said so herself in front of Jessica, yeah.
But but he got everyone to basically abandon their planet. And the only one who cares about her planet is her now. So I don't even buy that she's opposing him as a hero character. I don't even buy it. All she is a hermit. Even if there's some hint at it, I don't even buy it for a second. I don't buy it for a second. All I just see is that she's going to be a hermit on this planet, and I don't know how she's going to get off the planet because they basically abandoned it. It's now completely void of all life except her. I mean, or sentient life. Now everyone's gone out to fight the war.
Again, the story kind of backfires a wee bit in regards to emotional investment. And I get
Okay,
the
I will be
thematics,
pissed if she does become the hero character later on. If she does, I will be pissed.
I mean, it's implied in the sequels that there's children who get involved, and they ultimately like rebel against like Paul's method of ruling, and
Oh, okay, good. I'm like,
yeah,
so
yeah.
Like a time skip or something.
I mean, I haven't read the Dune sequels, but from what I've heard, like one of the children becomes this big worm god thing.
Wait, what?
It gets pretty weird.
Wait, a child becomes a worm?
A worm god human thing.
What? Something like Ungoliant?
Something like that. From what I've heard, it gets pretty weird according to the lore. So
I wonder how the hell they're gonna adapt that.
yeah, I maybe like a mixture of like practical effects, like you'd see from like Stranger Things, with a bit of like CGI in there or something like that. I think it can be done.
What we're doing, we wouldn't go that far with with our story. We wouldn't go that far. We wouldn't go that weird. Man, they really were on whatever that blue thing got into them. Was Herbert also on drugs himself?
Maybe
on spice, since that isn't drugs.
Maybe like the spice was just like cinnamon flavored cocaine or something.
You know, I'll be pissed by the time I know they're filming the next part right now, but I'll be pissed if Christopher Walken dies by the time that is finished. I'll be pissed.
Oh gosh, now that would be such a heavy loss. As if Akira Kuriyama wasn't a heavy enough loss as it was. Rest in peace, Akira Kuriyama. So I guess that's all we have to say in regards to Dune Part 2. Although there's one last thing I should say. What would you think of Dune Part 2 in relation to its predecessor, Dune Part 1?
Like I said, about this kid by the beginning, he's just it's kind of like Game of Thrones, where we're just normal kids, but by the end we're freaking godlike we're freaking monsters, we're freaking like badasses, like by the end of it, like there's just like one meme about like Game of Thrones where they said like we're just regular kids, and by the end they're like X-Men, like Mystique, like Professor X. And I guess Paul would be like Magneto.
I suppose that does make sense. That does make sense. I suppose there's been other things in regards to comparisons. One person that I saw it with said that she liked the way that the music was fixed. She was kind of annoyed by the constant music in the first film, but she liked how there were some films where there was no music needed to just let the music speak for itself. So there's other filmmaking aspects like that, and of course, there's the sheer visual spectacle of it all, with the mixture of the practical and the CGI, and
so is with this whole one thing about what you said about the kids and then inevitably coming to fight back against their father. Is that what inspired Luke Skywalker? If that, then I would say definitely it's like Darth Vader, or at least also like Dracula with Alucard or something.
That does make sense now that you've mentioned it, I guess. Yeah, what did you all think of Dune Part 1.2?
And what do you think of our thoughts?
Especially if you've read the books, we'd love to get your insight below if there's anything we've missed.
I will probably read the books, so I will also know about that too. All right? And we are
It's
done.
a long read. It's a long read alongside the Silmarillion. It's a long read. Are you ready?
Yep. It's a long Silmarillion. I'm going to read The Lord of the Rings, so I'm going to read that too.
Yeah, it's a great read. Great read. Let the binge reading begin.
Yeah.